Hey everybody, What's It Fox Gaming here. So today I wanted to have a look at the Dark Winter, the named 45 ACP Vector that comes with the Perfect Killer talent, and I wanted to have a little play with this and see where it fits into the game. And from the sort of limited testing that I've done, I do feel that this is a great weapon to have. Maybe not as a main weapon for conflict, but certainly in Dark Zone and PvE content it can absolutely be your main weapon. I've discovered over testing that it actually outperforms the Lady Death the longer a fight goes on. So it is very good as a secondary weapon if you're up against a team with a bunch of healers, for example. Not a bunch of healers, sorry, but a healer and a bunch of tanks, a very high armor team. So let's have a look at what this weapon actually does. As I say, it's the 45 ACP variant of the Vector, so it does a little bit less damage than the 9mm version that used to be very popular with Optimus before Lady Death got its buff. That means it does 1200, or it has 1200 rounds per minute as its rate of fire. The Lady Death, by comparison, is 900, so this hits for about 15 bullets per second. This can get off 20 bullets per second. So even though their base damage is very similar, technically speaking, without any buffs active, this is just going to do more damage because it's landing 5 more bullets per second, which is pretty high. I've rolled this with damage to targets out of cover, which is stronger than the damage to armor that Lady Death comes with. And the reason for that is that damage to armor doesn't work against shields, and of course when they're only into their health. Damage to targets out of cover, another multiplicative damage bonus, not only rolls at 10% instead of 6%, but it works against shields, skills, armor, and health. So it literally works 100% of the time, unless of course they're sat in cover, but you'll never see that for the most part. If someone's sat in cover, they're going to die regardless of your build, because that's just never a good choice. The build itself, what I've essentially tried to do here is consider that Perfect Killer needs to have very high crit chance. So just to read out the talent here, Perfect Killer, killing an enemy with a critical hit grants 50% critical hit damage for 10 seconds, a significant damage buff to your weapon in general. And what you need to make sure you're doing is hitting that critical hit chance cap, because you need to be trying to get that kill. The good news with Perfect Killer is it can reproc and essentially refresh that timer, and unusually it actually has a higher chance of reprocking once you've already activated it for the first time, because of course your critical hit damage bullets are 50% harder and therefore are more likely to be the bullet that closes the kill, which in turn will refresh the perk and you can continue on. So for PvE content it's fantastic. For Dark Zone content as well, it can work really well. Anything that's got a lot of NPCs, it's really good. Conflict, I found that it's only really better than the Lady D, as I said before, for those high armor fights when you're up against a bunch of tanks, especially with a healer. Because with Lady Death, you build up your stacks, but after the first reload, and for each consistent reload, or consecutive reload should I say, your damage output actually gets lower and lower as you lose more and more stacks, and it's quite hard to maintain stacks the longer a fight goes on. You literally end up with less and less each time you fire. Obviously with this, it's the first mag is pretty good, then you get killer active and it's very powerful, then you're more likely to get killer active and it becomes even more powerful, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of how you want to play the two weapons. This is for the quick burst, low health targets. This is for the longer fights, or for PvE content for sure. The build itself is basically my Lady D build, so 3 blues and 3 reds with very high crit chance and incredibly high crit damage. I've really been able to min-max this build. So we're running 2 pieces of Sokolov here because we get the 10% SMG damage and the 15% critical hit damage, and we are still sticking with the Intimidate Adrenaline Rush combo because it's just the best at the moment for SMG builds. The only difference for a PvE version of this build, you want to have lower armor, potentially, maybe 2 blue, and change this to Bloodsucker if you're playing solo. If you're playing group, just stick with Adrenaline Rush because they both give you bonus armor. Most of your pieces you want to have rolled to critical hit chance damage, but as SMGs have intrinsically high critical hit chance, as it's one of their core attributes. You see this is 18.5% and this is 20%. You can afford to have 1 or 2 pieces without the critical hit chance. So for example, my chest piece here rolled with max weapon handling, and that's perfect because I want to be able to reload faster and handling allows me to do so. The second Sokolov is my backpack, which is the Adrenaline Rush backpack. I didn't want to go for Walker and Harris here because it would have lowered my total damage output, so I decided just to stick with this one. Technically speaking, Perfect Adrenaline Rush doesn't increase your damage anyway, it just gives you a little bit more bonus armor. But as I'm running this as a 3 blue build, and Adrenaline Rush is percentage based, I have more bonus armor anyway, so I was happy with just running the Sokolov here. I got some Contractors with critical hit chance already rolled onto them, so I decided to re-roll these to blue. These give me a nice buff to damage to armor. And then I've got my Fox's Prayer here, which these are, I mean, literally perfect. There's nothing about this I'd change. 12% critical hit damage, so again I rerolled this to armor. If you can't quite get these pieces, don't worry, you may just want to consider swapping this out for a third piece of Sokolov, and potentially knees out for some Seska if you're struggling to hit the crit chance. I'm quite lucky with my rolls. I've played the game a lot historically, and my watch level is very high. If you are struggling to hit crit chance, just get a Seska in there, get a third Sokolov in, or maybe even just run these two as 2 Walker and Harris for the weapon damage and the 5% damage to armor. So you can be really flexible with this build. But as it is an SMG build, I would definitely say you want to hit 3 blue, 3 red. I really feel that's the sweet spot between not losing out too much damage, but not losing out too much survivability as well. So definitely aim for 3-3 if you can. The final piece is Grupo Sombra, because this of course gives us 15% crit damage, and again it's just rolled with chance and damage already on. I just simply re-rolled the core attribute to blue. Coyotes is the single best damage buff in slots in terms of critical hit damage, because we're always going to be within 0 to 15 meters. This is an intimidate build. This is 25% critical hit damage just for being in the range that we should be anyway, and that's technically speaking from a gear piece the highest buff you can get for crit damage anyway. Obviously this is going to work in conjunction with Perfect Killer as well, which is 50%. So with all the mods that I've got on here as well, I've got some nice rolled mods, and of course on the weapon itself I've got the critical hit damage mod from Firewall, which is absolutely 100% the specialization you want to be running. My stats have been able to get up to 59.7% crit chance, so basically cap 180 crit damage, but this isn't factoring in the additional 25% that I'm going to be getting from Coyotes, and it also isn't factoring in Perfect Killer. With both of those active, which after the first kill should pretty much be guaranteed or very close to, I'm going to be looking at 255% critical hit damage, which is insane. That's incredibly high, and one of the highest, ways to get it to that level. So yeah, Perfect Killer and Coyotes at that range is just ridiculous. We're going to be absolutely melting. Firewall is good for a number of reasons, apart from just the critical hit damage mod that's doubly effective compared to the other mods. We get 10% extra bonus damage for our entire team when we are ourselves within 10 meters of an enemy, and we get the shield here that's going to give us an additional 12% damage for being in 10 meters as well. And because we've got 3 blues, actually this shield is quite tanky, so it's in a very effective way to get a damage buff and stay alive longer in a fight, just to ensure we get that Perfect Killer talent. We have the booster hive as well, because unfortunately all I seem to see these days is Eclipse users. It's such a easy way to get wins, so a lot of people are kind of overly relying on it, and until they nerf it we're just going to see it a lot. So I would suggest running a booster hive, because it just cleanses all status effects the moment that one of the drones hits you, regardless of the what was I saying? Regardless of the skill tier. Sorry, I have completely lost my train of thought there. So yeah, the good thing with the booster hive, and I've said this in previous videos, but just for anybody that hasn't watched, regardless of your skill tier, it doesn't actually say it in the description for the booster hive. It always cleanses all status effects the moment a drone hits you, and only then does it apply the weapon handling and has a protection buff from that point onwards. So in terms of weapon damage, now obviously these two weapons are different RPM. So as I said, the Lady D can only get 15 bullets in a second, whereas in the Vector can get 20. If we look at the base damage here, so 553k for a Lady D bullet that's got the amped damage. So let's see what this is without Killer. So 372. Now obviously this is firing quite a fair bit faster, so ignore the fact that the bullet damage is going to be lower, because you're fitting 5 more bullets per second, which obviously adds up to quite a substantial amount of extra damage. But with Killer active, so now you see Killer on the side of the gun there, 433k we're hitting there at 1200 RPM, 600 there, so they actually balance out to quite similar when you factor in the RPM, which is crazy. And this is getting its damage down 1200 RPM, so you can really burst people down with that Perfect Killer talent active. So yeah, it's definitely a fantastic weapon to use. But as I said before, if you're using Lady D, you blow all of your mag, you need to reload, you obviously dance and you reload. I've now got about half my stacks. Empty that mag, half of it now doesn't have the damage buff, do the same thing again, and it just slowly but surely gets less and less of your mag is buffed. So the way that I like to play Dark Winter, if I'm going to use it in a conflict game, is have it as my secondary, because yes, Lady Death is better, nobody can argue that point, it is the best SMG in the game, but if the longer a fight goes on, you get diminishing returns and you know, because you can build up less and less stacks, and you don't want to be spending time running around building stacks. You just want to be shooting into your enemy. Yes, it's important to chicken dance whilst you reload because it will keep you alive for longer, and that's an effective way of building stacks. But if you're finding that your fights are lasting too long, so this is more important for the dark zone, you may find that the Dark Winter is stronger, because ultimately, you know, if this person here, you know, you're doing a 367k crit, and then you get killer active, now it's 433, so it's more likely that the next kill is going to be from a crit, just because the crit bullets are hitting harder. So not only are you not having to worry about build up stacks and losing stacks each time you have to reload, but actually you're more likely to have the additional damage with each future reload. So 100% Dark Winter is better after the first reload, and Lady Death is worse after the first reload. So that's, you just need to think about it. Am I in a game with like my team here, for example, you see the bottom guy's got a lot of armor, but most of the people have low armor. If you're in a game where most of them have low armor, use Lady Death. But if you're in a Dark Zone server, everybody's running armor regen, actually Dark Winter is stronger. Yeah, the initial burst damage from that first mag isn't. The longer that a fight goes on, yeah, it's fantastic. The good news is it actually procs there just from getting them down and not killing them. It does also proc off the skills as well, which is really nice. So if you see a drone or a hive or something, it procs off of that as well. Annoyingly, I'm testing this in Conflict, which is actually where I feel that the gun is worse. There aren't many like super high armor builds in Conflict, but it is good at chaining loads of kills together. Where it shines is the Dark Zone, and maybe even more than that is PvE. If you want to make a PvE build around the Dark Winter, you're going to have a great time with it, because you can, you know, take off some of the armor that I've included in this build. Oh, there's one this side. I'm coming, buddies! Yeah, you can take off some of the armour, and, you know, really focus on that high crit chance, high crit damage, perfect optimised build. That was my teammate. I thought that wasn't a teammate then. That scared the hell out of me. Keep him alive whilst he's being rezzed. Yeah, so, you know, for PvE, if you run a Bloodsucker Intimidate build or an Adrenaline Rush Intimidate build, the Dark Winter is phenomenal. You almost have 100% uptime on Perfect Killer. In the Dark Zone, it's really good against armor regen builds because, yes, its overall first mag damage is obviously lower than Lady Death, but you know, you find the Dark Zone, you never ever kill somebody in one mag in a long fight when they're running armor regen, because they're just going to run around, tank as much damage as possible, and a lot of the time the fights just last longer. Try it out in that scenario, it is really good. Oh, bad time to reload. No, bad time to reload. Oh, Killer saved my life there. Woo! One thing I really like about Adrenaline Rush builds is they let you know when someone's close, even if it's through a wall, because you get the little proc come up. And that's really good, so the little symbol, so you know when somebody's essentially in that kind of range. Well, this has been an easy mercy, hasn't it? Oh, it doesn't do too bad at range. Interesting. We've got that killer talent active. Reactivated it. Let's kill the drone as well to keep it going. Wow, with my awesome accuracy. No, we didn't get it that time, that's a shame. Medkit here. So obviously SMGs aren't great at range, but oh, looks like we're bum rushing. Yeah, it, you know, goes back to what I said at the start of the video. It definitely has a place in the game, and I think when they nerf, what is wrong with my words today? When they nerf Lady Death, there you go, that's a new sentence for you all. When they eventually nerf Lady Death, which I think they probably will, maybe not by too much, because I don't think it's like broken or anything. It's just the new strongest weapon. There will always be a strongest weapon in the game. There can't not be. This is a statistic-based game, so one weapon will always do more than everything else. Oh, he's already dead. I think this could be a really good second option. I mean, yes, the 9mm version technically does better burst damage, particularly with Optimus, but like I said before, this is for the drawn-out fights, so, you know, that's when you want to consider using this weapon. The longer a fight, the more powerful Dark Winter becomes, and the shorter the fight, the more powerful that your Lady D is. So, as long as you bear that in mind whilst making your loadout and choosing when to use it, I think you'll have a really good time with it. Please let me know if you are using it at the moment. I'm curious to know of any good PvE builds using this weapon, because I did a quick test in PvE and it performed really well. You know, I would probably use this over a Chameleon for a solo PvE build. It's just really good, and it looks cool as well. It's such a good looking weapon. But yeah, let me know sort of any particular builds that you're using with this weapon in PvP and PvE. Do you really like it in the Dark Zone? Do you think it shines there? I'm curious to know exactly how you're using it. Pretty good game for us here. Looks like our team pretty much smashed the other team there, but they had a couple of level 1s. That's once again Massive's awesome matchmaking at play. They should never have been paired against us, but you know, that's nobody's fault here apart from the developers. I think also the population of this game is at an all-time low at the moment, so it's probably struggling to matchmake. But yeah, you know, I'm happy with that build. I'm happy with that weapon. It can do a lot of damage in the right circumstances. As I was saying, let me know of any builds that you guys run. I'm curious to hear how you think it performs in Conflict, the Dark Zone, and in sort of heroic content in PvE. As always, thank you very much for sticking through to the end of the video and for the continued support of the channel. Apologies that the videos have been a little bit less frequent lately. I'm just waiting for TU11 to come out now and saving some ideas for then. So, you know, the content might be coming out quite as much as before, but it's still going to be there. Make sure you hit that subscribe and notification option so you know when the new videos are dropping. And until then, I will see you all in the next video. Peace.